Mythology, the natural genesis and typology of the two truths. The Greek mythos, which is usually taken to mean a saying or a word, and is sometimes equivalent to logos. In consequence, mythology has been declared to have originated in mere sayings, the clue to which was lost before mythology proper could have existed. For it has been affirmed by Max Muller and maintained by his followers that the radical meaning and primitive power of certain words and sayings must be obscured or lost for them to become mythological, and that the essential character of a true myth consists in its being no longer intelligible by a reference to the spoken language. Such teaching of comparative mythology is the result of its being limited to the Aryan area, and if the myth be no longer intelligible in the later languages, we must look for it in the earlier. The Greek muthoi for sayings represents the Egyptian mutu for ejaculations or brief utterances. Mutuni means lo it is, or it is verily so. In a similar sense, so moti it be is used by our Freemasons, which brings on a saying and an ancient mode of saying under one word. Mut signifies the pronouncing of conservative formulas, and these formulas and wise sayings were part of the muthoi in Egypt. The muthoi or myths did not begin in Greece or originate in any Aryan language, nor with the sayings which are the fading metaphors of mythology and the utterances of its second childhood. Nor is the myth a mere word in Greek. Mutheomai is not simply to say, but to feign and fable, represent and invent. Mukikauj signifies that which pertains to fable and myth in an early sense. Mukoloju is to recite fables. In Attic prose, the myth was commonly a legend of early Greek times, before the dawn of history. The mythoi were no mere sayings in a modern sense. They were mystical. In them, the mysteries were uttered by word of mouth to the ear alone, like the Smriti of India. The myths are sayings because they were only to be said, not written. Hence, mythos denotes anything delivered by word of mouth. They are myths because uttered by word of mouth alone, but they were so uttered because they contained the hidden oral wisdom and dark sayings of old. The mythoi are the logia, and the logia, or sayings, are assignable to a sayer or logos, who was personified as the utterer in the mythology which preceded the theology. The sayings, or logia in Egypt, were assigned to Tat, the moon god, who was the measurer of time, the reckoner and registrar of truth in the hall of the twofold truth, or double justice. In consequence of his being primarily a representative of the dual lunation, Tat was the sayer, utterer of the divine words, and a logos, tongue, or word in person. The sayings or logia were likewise attributed to the youthful solar god Hept, the Egyptian Jesus of the book of Ecclesiasticus, and the second Adam, who was another of the sayers of whom we read, I have heard the words of Hept and Hartataf. It is said in their sayings. The ass, I, and the cat, Pate, are the sayers of great words in the house of Pet, or heaven. The Christian Gospels were founded on and originated in the logia or sayings, as Papias emphatically declares. The Christ of John is the Word, logos or sayer in person. His teaching, according to John and Matthew, was conveyed by the sayings, logia or mythoi. Now it is immaterial whether the Greek muthoi or mythoi be connected at root, not merely etymologically, with the Egyptian Mati, who represents the two truths, but Mu and Ma are interchangeable, and these sayings were held to be the words of truth and wisdom personified. When Paul speaks of a true saying, he means one of the sayings of truth, of aletheia. So far from Egyptian mythology being founded on words that have lost their senses, it is the science of truth in a twofold phase or character, called Mati. Mati, as divinity, is the goddess who presides in the hall of the twin truth. Ma'ati is also a title of Tat in relation to the two truths. The two truths, or twinship of Ma'ati, appear in the Sanskrit Mithuna, a twin couple, the zodiacal Gemini, the state of being dual, Greek meta, and one form of the Mati as Ma and Shu was that of the zodiacal Gemini in Egypt. Ma'ati in Sanskrit signified measure and exact knowledge. In Egyptian, ma'at as a noun means an inflexible rule of right, that which is strictly accurate in measure and perfect as the poise of scales, the straightness of the plumb line, or the stretched-out finger. Mythology proper, by which is meant its relation to time as distinguished from space, which will be hereafter described, began with the measuring and establishing of periods. Tat and Ma'at then are two personified forms of the measurer and the utterer of truth. This has two aspects like the mother, or the moon, in her dual lunation, and these sayers in Egypt preceded the sayings in Greece. Moreover, myth and logos are interchangeable in Greek, and one sense of the word logos is a true narration. As it is said in the Gorgias, the fable differs from logoi, because the latter is true. Thus, the logos or myth is identical with the Maat-Kheru or true word of the Egyptian theosophy, the word that was made truth when impersonated in the god Heru Maat-Kheru. It is now intended to show that mythology is at root the science of the two truths of Maati, which are at the foundations of Egyptian thought and expression. For instance, the moth is a perfect type of Maati on account of its transformation from the grub. Mato in Finn is the grub or worm, Mato, lap, the caterpillar or grub, Mathu, Gothic, a worm. In English, the moth is the winged worm, sometimes called a soul in the second of two phases. Ma'ati may denote water and breath, decay and renewal, a pair of feet, the two waters, the two solstices, the double lunation, the twin lion gods, light and shade, menstruation and gestation, wet and heat, the circle and cross, in the knot or ankh, the collar and counterpoise, the house of the two truths, or any other type of twinship in which the beginning at first bifurcated. For it may be affirmed generally that all veritable beginning in typology, mythology, numbers, and language can be traced to the opening of a oneness which divides and becomes dual in its manifestation. So far as the evidence reaches back, all beginning is synonymous with opening. In Egyptian, to found is to open. In Maori and Mangayan, to being in Tupu is to open as the bud and flower. So the place of opening is the tef, the tuba in Kafir, and the earliest ascertainable human thought was related to opening. Night opened the starry heaven. The black cloud opened with its quivering assegai of the lightning. Darkness opened into day. The mother opened to give birth. The child opened into the woman or man at puberty. The male opened the female. The eye opened for seeing, the ear for hearing. The nostrils opened with the breath of life. The mouth opened to utter forth. Hence the mouth and mother are one by name. In the act of opening, things became dual, and this was the bifurcation signified by the Kamite, two truths of all beginning. Max Muller asserts that, as soon as Surius appears as a masculine form, we are in the very thick of mythology. That is, as soon as sex is distinguishable in words. Nay, but we are caught in the thicket before language was sex-denoting at all, and it is at that stage we have to read some of the hardest riddles of the Sphinx of mythology. The Khoisan, amongst other languages, reaches back to that stage. Thou son of a red she-bull is a Khoisan address to a hero. This agrees with the bull called Sothis at her time. Language had but one name then for the beast of both sexes. So Nin, in the Assyrian, denotes both the lord and the lady, because Nin, or Ninu, was the name of the child, the English Ninny, and the child was named before the two sexes were distinguished by different terminals. Nin, for the child, was not a sex-denoting word, and the child so named might be of either, and so far as the type goes, of both. The Egyptian type of divinity is the Nunter, or Neuter, our neuter. The Nu is the Ninny, the impubescent boy, or young one, the Rakart of either sex, as is the child or the colt. This type name is found in English, Greek, Italian, Javanese, Fijian, North American Indian, and other languages, and it is Inner African for the young one, as Nina in Mende, Nina in Gibandi, Anene in Soso, Neni in Kiriman, Nunina in Toma, Anene in Kisekise. Also for the younger brother, as now in Kawama, Nayan in Yula, Ninda in Biafada, Nana in Bagbalan, Niena in Selana, Ninda in Landoma, Neneye in Pangela, Niene in Kiamba, Nande in Yamban, Nuane in Iziele. It is likewise applied to the younger sister. As the child, Homo was born twin, within the limits of language, and was separated and distinguished at puberty. We shall find the two sexes are said to have been divided by the lizard or serpent, or severed by the stone of the opener. And it will be shown how the one statement is related to the female, the other to the male. The totemic mysteries reveal the fact that the individual personality was constituted at the period of puberty and determined as twain by the manifestation of sex, the two truths of reproduction. Until that time, the child name was not distinguished by gender. In Egyptian, it was also the Nakin, or young one, as the impubescent. Nach denoted pubescence or virile power, which the terminal and negatives. Nicholas, the good genius of children, who was always a child himself, is the Nakin, or Nachlas. The Anak in Malay, Salayer, and Javanese is the child in the same sense. Nakin reappears in the Sanskrit Nagna, and Nagnaka for the girl who is yet impubescent, and on that account allowed to go naked. In Zulu, Guna means to be quite naked, or to expose the person, and in English Nakni is to make naked. The naked were the impubescent, those who did not need to be clothed. Hence the two classes in the Hall of Two Truths, the good and the evil, are called the clothed and the unclothed, in accordance with this simple origin of the typology.